There's a difference between believing in God and following God. Let me show you an example with a man called Gideon in Judges. You see, Gideon believed in God. He believed in God so much that he was willing to go to war with only 300 men. But Gideon didn't follow God. You see, after he was victorious, all of the people said, Gideon, you're so amazing. Be our king. And Gideon says, no, I will not be your king. God is your king. You see, at first it sounds humble, but what we actually learn in hindsight is Gideon was rejecting kingship God's way. Because what happens in Gideon's life is he starts acting like a king, just not the type of king God had called any king of Israel to be. In effect, he didn't follow God's way of kingship. He didn't follow God. You see, in Deuteronomy, God had specific requirements if someone was going to be king of his people. He said that person must be humble. He mustn't accumulate wealth for himself whilst others suffer. He mustn't have many wives. He must stick to one wife so his heart remains pure. Unlike all of the other kings, God wanted the king of Israel to be a humble servant, fixed on serving God and serving his people. But what Gideon does is start acting like a king of the land. You see, the kings of the land would put many taxes on their people and accumulate wealth. They would have many wives as a status symbol. They would adorn themselves with this royal drip so that everyone would stop and awe at them. And that's what Gideon does. You see, even though he says, no, I will not be your king, he says, but feel free to give me your gold. And everyone starts giving their gold to Gideon. Another way in which Gideon started acting like the kings of the land is he made for himself this golden ephod. It's kind of like this priestly robe. And you can imagine when Gideon entered, a town square wearing this golden robe, everyone would stop, bow to him, pay him respects, and some even start to worship Gideon himself as if he is divine. Similarly, Gideon, like all of these other kings, starts accumulating for himself many wives. Even though God said, the type of king that I want will have one wife, will not accumulate many wives. And by the end of his life, Gideon even calls his son Abimelech. Abimelech literally means, my dad is king. So we see that even though Gideon seems to reject the kingship title, what he is rejecting is God's way. He doesn't want to follow God. He doesn't want to follow God's way of being king because that way requires sacrifice. What Gideon wanted was the way of the other kings. And so as believers, I think we have two choices. Will we stop at believing God? Or will we actually follow God, even though his way requires more sacrifice from us? What's interesting is if you consider Gideon at the end of his life, we never see God use Gideon again, like he did when he was in war with just 300 men. Even more so, the Bible stops referring to him as Gideon, which was his Hebrew name, and starts referring to him as Jerubbaal, Baal being the pagan god. You see, this man of faith, this man that God once used, this man that believed in God, didn't want to follow God's way. And by the end of his life, his own way looks no different from the worldly ways around him, such that even his name itself cannot be distinguished in the culture.